Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us for the National Institute of Justice Research Assistantship Program webinar. At this time, it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Angela Moore, Senior Science Advisor at the National Institute of Justice.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And thank you everyone for joining us today for this webinar about NIJ's Research Assistant Program, also known as the RAP. Next slide, please. So today what we want to do is talk a little bit about NIJ. We'll provide information about NIJ, how we're organized, and then we're going to discuss the purpose and benefits of the RAP. We'll talk about financial support provided to students through the RAP, the eligibility and application requirements, the review process for applications, what we look for in candidates, and I'll provide some examples of the type of work RAs do for NIJ, and hopefully we'll have sufficient time at the end for Q&A. So who are we? NIJ is the Research Development and Evaluation Agency of the Department of Justice. Our mission is to improve knowledge and understanding of crime and justice through science. Next, please. NIJ has 9 offices through which we accomplish our work. The Office of the Director, in which she makes all decisions regarding NIJ's work. We have 5 science offices, which I'll come back to in a minute. Our Office of Communications is essential to disseminating NIJ's work. Our Office of Operations ensures that we have the funds and the mechanisms in which to do our work. And our Office of Grants Management ensures that all of our research awards get processed. The 5 science offices is through which research assistants work with NIJ. Our crime prevention and youth justice is where the bulk of our juvenile justice work is housed, along with other topics such as community crime prevention and hate crimes. Our criminal justice systems office includes policing, courts, corrections, and reentry. Investigative and forensic sciences, as the name indicates, it includes DNA research, as well as our National Missing and Unidentified Person System, also known as NAMUS. In our Technology and Standards Office, it includes the development and testing of tools and technologies used by law enforcement, along with geospatial research, as well as artificial intelligence. And last but not least, our Office of Violence and Victimization includes our gun violence research, community crime prevention, and violence against women and family violence research and evaluation. Next, please. So what's the purpose of the RAP? So the 3 primary goals of the program is first, to grow the field of researchers focused on crime and justice research. So we want to build a pipeline of researchers. Second is to provide doctoral students with practical and applied research experience. I just want to note at this point that NIJ is not a policy-making research agency. We provide the results of research to practitioners, policymakers, and the justice field writ large, and they decide how they want to change their practices and develop or modify policies based on those results. Sometimes we have students that come to NIJ with the hopes of making policy, and so I want to make sure that students know that we are not a policy-making organization. And third, the RAP affords doctoral students opportunities to work with NIJ scientists. Next, please. Okay, so what are some of the benefits of the RAP? First, it affords students the opportunity to work with the only federal agency in the U.S. solely dedicated to criminal justice research, development, testing, and evaluation. While there are other agencies that do engage in crime and justice research and evaluation, NIJ is the only one primarily focused on this type of work. The RAP provides opportunities for students to explore careers outside of academia. In addition, the RAP provides networking opportunities with NIJ's partners and stakeholders within and external to government. Also, the RAP enables NIJ scientists to work with some of the best and brightest doctoral students. And last but not least, through the RAP, we provide funding to graduate students. So what does that funding look like? We provide stipends to students, and students work up to 30 hours per week, and they either work for 9 to 9.5 months for the academic year or 12 months for the whole calendar year. This is based on university policy or contract, and the research assistants at NIJ are treated similarly to RAs that are working in the department or college at their sponsoring university. We also provide tuition remission that can be up to 20 credits for RAs who only work during the academic year, or 24 credits for RAs who work for the entire calendar year. That is dependent upon the doctoral degree program and discipline, the RA's year in their program, and other university policy. Students can also work during their breaks, fall, winter, spring, and summer. That's contingent upon funding from NIJ, as well as approval by NIJ and the university. Working during breaks in the summer is optional for RAs. It is not required. Health benefits are provided through the funding that NIJ provides to the university, and the university provides health benefits to the research assistants. Also, we provide approved travel and training. Training could be in terms of enhancing the skill sets of the research assistants. Also, travel, it can be approved as well. We provide funds for students to attend conferences such as the American Society of Criminology, the American Sociological Association, the International Association of Chiefs of Police, also to go to research sites for data collection activities. It's all in accordance with NIJ's needs, the students' interests, as well as other benefits that are accorded to students through the university. Lastly, I just want to note that the initial placement in the RAP is for 1 year with the potential to be extended to 2, but that is based on the student's interests, NIJ's needs, and also how well the student performs while working with NIJ. Research assistants are subject to the same code of conduct as at the university, and that would also apply to federal contractors. Research assistants are considered federal contractors, not federal employees of NIJ. Lastly, NIJ provides a government laptop for RAs to do their work. So that equipment is provided. Next, please. Okay, What are the eligibility requirements for research assistants? First and foremost, applicants must be U.S. citizens. They also have to be enrolled in a research-based doctoral degree program at a public or private university. If there's any questions about that, certainly the university can contact the RAP manager, and that email will be provided at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. Students must be enrolled throughout their NIJ placement. In terms of degree programs, candidates must be working towards a doctoral degree throughout the research assistantship period of performance. Degree programs that are included are Doctor of Philosophy, Doctor of Public Administration, Doctor of Public Health, Doctor of Social Work. We also will accept students in doctoral programs related to education. However, the student must be in a discipline related to the social and behavioral sciences, operations technology, information and sensors research and development, or investigative and forensic sciences. There is also, as it relates to once an RA is selected, there's certain training that they have to go through, such as human subjects training. Also, all research assistants must go through a background check. Successful completion and approval of all required U.S. Department of Justice profile and pre-screening paperwork, security reviews, and background investigation are required. And that process takes up to 3 months. So that's just something for applicants to keep in mind. Next, please. Okay, in terms of the application requirements, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about each one of these because they are all clearly described on the NIJ website. But each applicant must provide a statement of interest, a public safety challenge essay, their resume or CV, the writing sample of a scientific paper, unofficial transcripts for graduate and undergraduate as relevant, one letter of recommendation. Applicants do not need to provide more than one, and 3 references. I note that we use the term here on the slide. It says work with your graduate program director to submit your application electronically. It may not be graduate program director. We're using that term generically, but I would recommend that the candidate submissions be submitted by an authorized representative within the department or the college, because the award that we make is between NIJ and the university, not the student. The submission cannot come from the student directly. We will not accept it. The reason for that is because the agreement is with the university and they are responsible. We can't have students submit and the university don't know that they've applied. So we will not accept a package from a student. It must come from the appropriate representative at the university. Next, please. Okay, so the review process. What happens? First step is that after we review the application and we make sure everything has been submitted, Within the deadline, the applications are reviewed and rated by NIJ science staff. And we use a rubric, and it's based on everything that was submitted, all the requirements, everything gets reviewed and rated, except, of course, we don't review and rate the transcripts, but we make sure they have been provided. After we go through that process, and that's the first stage in which some applications will fall out. So the highest rated, we use those to determine whether or not we're going to interview a particular applicant. So selected applicants will be interviewed via video and then again rated by science staff. And we use another rubric to rate the interview. After that happens, a recommendation is made to the NIJ director, and she, in this case, or her designee will review and make an approval. Once that happens, the manager will reach out to the appropriate official at the university and the student to make the offer. The student can accept or not, and if the student does accept, then we begin the process of doing the paperwork that is required to bring on the student. We have to establish an agreement with the university or use a different funding mechanism if it's a private university. And we also, once that is done, then we have to initiate the background check. The entire process from establishing the agreement and the background check can take up to 5 months. All goes well, if there's no delays, the research assistants begin working with NIJ in the fall. And we try to have that align with when classes start for the fall semester or however the university is established in terms of their semesters or trimesters. Couple of things to note. Since COVID-19, RAs have not been working on site at NIJ. NIJ staff are currently not working on site. We're only required to go into the office 2 days every 2 weeks or 1 day per week. So it doesn't make sense for us to require RAs to move to the DC metro region to work remotely. At the present time, we do not anticipate this changing. So for the current RAs, they are all working remotely, and they will continue to work remotely for the 2023 to 2024 academic and/or calendar year. And we anticipate that will stay the same for the 2024 to 2025 academic and/or calendar year. RAs are university employees. They're supervised by the university and classified as contractors while working with NIJ. On-site management is provided by me as the RAP manager, as well as the scientists who work with the RAs. The RAs work with the scientists and the manager to develop their work plan. Also, RAs work is subject to mid-year and annual reviews, as well as check-ins with scientists. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are we looking for in terms of candidates? RAs need to have strong writing skills, strong reasoning ability, and with that, we mean that research assistants must be able to work independently, accurately, and in a timely manner, and also be willing to take initiative. Work will be assigned, but RAs also should be able to request and talk to scientists about work that they're interested in engaging in. RAs need to have advanced communication skills. So candidates must be able to communicate effectively orally and in writing in order to prepare comprehensive research reports, proposals, and evaluations, be able to make recommendations, be able to present on behalf of NIJ, and as well as be able to enhance the work that we do. Applicants should have specialized training. So in other words, there's a particular area of focus. And with that, we try to align applicants' area of interest with the particular research office so that they can work and continue to build their research interest. But we also expect RAs to function as a generalist if necessary. Sometimes RAs are asked to work in an area in which they don't have a background. So it's an opportunity to learn a new area. So we expect that, and that does happen. Sometimes we have a project that comes in from the Assistant Attorney General's office or even from the White House, and we'll ask an RA to work on that. And so they might have to get up to speed really quickly on a topic so that they can lend their skills to that particular area. So that's what we expect for research assistants to be able to do. Next. So to give you an idea of some of the types of work RAs are involved in, they may develop measurement databases for research projects. They may develop programmatic databases so we can look at the trends in terms of the research that we've supported. RAs conduct quantitative and qualitative analyses, and they produce peer-reviewed journal articles. They may draft reports, engage in intramural research studies with NIJ scientists. RAs present research findings. This could be NIJ work, but RAs also are afforded an opportunity to present their own research through the RAP. And they also co-author various types of NIJ articles, reports, white papers, briefs, and summaries. In terms of the placement, RAs are placed for 1 year with the opportunity to have that extended to 2. Decisions about placement are made annually. It's based on need, funding, and how well the RAs perform while working with NIJ. Next, please. All right. Hopefully, we've addressed some of the questions you might have had, but at this time, we're ready for additional questions. So, Stacy, do we have questions to address?
We do, and as a reminder, you may submit questions by clicking on the 3 dots at the bottom right of your screen and then select Q&A, and be sure to send your question to all panelists. So here we go with the questions. Is there a specific length maximum for the writing sample?
No.
Can students on international visa status but enrolled in a U.S. doctoral program in good standing apply?
Students, you have to be, as indicated earlier, you have to be a U.S. citizen or, and now I'm going back to that slide, you have to be a U.S. citizen or a permanent U.S. resident.
Okay. Does the scientific paper have to be your own research, or can it be an interpretation of someone else's research?
The paper should be written by the student, the applicant. It doesn't, whatever that looks like is up to the student, but it has to be provided by the student. So if they're critiquing someone else's work, that's fine, but it must be of a scientific nature.
Okay. And does it help the background check process if the student has a clearance from another federal agency?
I wish it did, but normally DOJ does its own background check. That might be taken into consideration, but I could not guarantee that that would shorten the process.
Okay, thank you. Are RAs paired with a single mentor? And if so, how is this mentor selected?
No, they are not. And the reason is because RAs may work with more than one scientist. So those scientists can serve sort of as what I would call situational mentors. But in addition to the scientists, the RAP manager, which is me, provides mentoring to the RAs as well.
Okay. Is an ED.D program considered eligible?
It depends on the type of background the doctoral student has. So if they're in education, if the focus is on the social and behavioral sciences or something related to technology and standards or investigative and forensic sciences. So the focus has to be on that if the student is in a ED program.
Are part-time doctoral students eligible?
The student, that's a must, they're gonna work for NIJ 20 to 24 hours. And so if the university allows that, but normally the RAs are full-time doctoral students.
Okay, and there's a second part to that one. It says, do you prefer students finish course requirements before applying?
That really is up to the student. We've, so some doctoral students that have worked with us have already advanced to candidacy, some have not. It really is up to the student. But one thing I want to mention, it is critically important to us that students finish. The RAP is an opportunity to learn, to grow, etc., but it should not hinder or interfere with the student continuing with her or his degree and completing. Because, as I like to say, your success is our success. So we want students to finish. So that's something to consider in applying. Will this be helpful and beneficial? And can you work with NIJ and still get your coursework and your dissertation done if you are at that stage when you come to work with NIJ?
Okay, and next question is, what is the best way to get a sense of the research currently ongoing at NIJ and whether this is a good fit with our interests?
So I'm glad someone asked that question. The first thing one should do is go to the webpage where we describe the RAP and carefully review everything that's there, because all the requirements for the Research Assistantship Program is on that webpage, as well as names of former and current research assistants. So that's the first thing. And then the second is to search the NIJ website to see the different things we do and we fund. And a spoiler alert or a helpful hint: you will be asked, what do you know about NIJ, if you receive an interview. And it certainly is disappointing when an applicant cannot answer questions, basic questions about NIJ. And so if an applicant is not going to take the time to read the NIJ website prior to an interview, then they likely are probably not going to be a good fit.
Okay. And this one says, having publication is good for securing an RA position. I'm guessing having been published.
That certainly is helpful, but it's not all about quantity. Certainly, it's about quality, and it's also demonstrating that one is capable and qualified to be an RA based upon the application package one provides. And I also want to mention at this point, it is very important for students to work with the individual who is responsible for submitting their packet and making sure that person does it and does it by the deadline. Regrettably, there have been situations where that person, whoever it is at the university, did not submit a student's application on time. And so it was denied. And it wasn't the student's fault. So you have to make sure that you are in contact with that person and you ensure that they actually submitted it and it was submitted on time.
And the next question is, which year in the PhD should someone apply?
That's up to the student. We can't tell you when you should apply. I can say this, that you want to be the most qualified as you can for the position. You want to have the skills that we're looking for. So if you consider, ideal candidate, you want to have solid knowledge of analytical statistical and research and evaluation methods. You want to have that knowledge. I mean, you want to be solid in terms of your communication and writing skills. How well you and how developed you are, that depends on the student. We can't say what year one needs to be in order to have accomplished that. I know we've had questions in the past regarding why don't we have master's level. And one of the reasons is because we're trying to grow the field. And not all master's students are going to go into a PhD program and complete it. So that's why we've limited it at this point to doctoral students. Also, we've had challenges in the past because master's level students weren't ready or prepared for the level of work they were going to do in the RAP. So that's why. I see we have a question that popped up, and so I will answer the question now. The announcement for the next cohort of research assistants has not been posted yet. We would like to post it very soon, but we all, in case you may not be aware, we are dealing with the potential of a government shutdown. So we are in a wait and see mode to determine when we're going to announce for the next cohort, which would be for the 2024 to 2025 academic and calendar year. We have not announced yet because we're waiting to see what's going to happen. But just keep checking the website to see when it is posted. That will determine what happens, will determine what the deadline will be, et cetera. That's why it is not posted yet. If it was up to me, it would already be posted, but we have to deal with the potential for the government shutdown, and that's why it has not been posted yet. But despite not having announced it yet, we fully intend to announce it, so there's no reason why potential applicants cannot start working on their documents now. That gives you ample time to write a compelling statement of interest, to write a thoughtful and clear and concise challenge essay. So you don't have to wait, and you certainly don't want to wait to the last minute to secure your recommendation. Make sure you have someone who can prepare a recommendation that knows you well enough to speak about your work. So if you're interested in becoming a RA with NIJ, I highly encourage you to start the process now.
Thank you. I have a question. If an RA already has an advisor, is it possible to work with him rather than an NIJ mentor?
I'm not sure I understand the question. If a student is going to become an RA at NIJ, they're going to be working with NIJ scientists. Now, certainly who the student decides to be their mentor, that's up to the student. They don't have to have a mentor at NIJ. They certainly can seek that out, and it can be provided. but the students that are serving as research assistants, they work with scientists, they work with on various research projects, other program development activities, etc. So it's up to the student, but they will be assigned to work with one or more scientists at NIJ during their tenure as a research assistant.
Okay. Can I send a paper that I co-authored for a group research project?
I would not recommend a co-authored paper because it's hard to determine who did the work on the paper. The writing sample, it could be something that a student did in one of their classes. It's better if it's authored by the applicant solely rather than with someone else. That way we can see how well the student writes, their thinking process, reasoning, etc. So I don't recommend that. I mean, we won't reject it, but it makes it very hard to determine who did the work if there's more than one author on that paper.
Okay. Do most RAs complete their dissertations using NIJ data, or is the research conducted as part of the research assistantship typically independent from the dissertation?
It depends. So sorry for equivocating, because we have had students who have come as research assistants, have worked on a particular project, and then decided to use data from a particular project. We cannot provide students data from a project that they work on while a research assistant. However, the student can pursue, and there's a process and there's things that have to be done, and we've had students do that before, and it has been handled by our Human Subjects Protection Officer to make sure all the rules and regulations that applied in NIJ getting the data also apply to the student getting the data. So we don't provide the data, but we can certainly serve as a conduit for the student getting the data. But the research projects that students work on while research assistants are independent of the data they use for their dissertation. Can it come? Can it be data that was generated through NIJ projects, et cetera? Yes. But the process for students to get that data is separate from the work they do. So it's not like if a student works on a grant and then can use data from a grant for their dissertation. These things are independent. We have to keep them separate. But it could happen as a result of the student being a research assistant that they decide they want to work on data from an NIJ project, and then the process of getting that data is pursued, and NIJ can assist with that, but we can't just give the student the data.
Okay. And can students on fellowships participate in the program?
Yeah. It's as long as there's no double dipping or supplanting of funds, that is possible. The challenge is because NIJ covers certain things, if those things are already being covered through a fellowship like tuition remission, health benefits, and other things, we would not cover that too. So it certainly could be possible, but it might be difficult if money has already been provided for those things to then also work through the RAP. Because the RAP is not just to work on a research project. We really are supporting the students in their matriculation. So if there's already funding to do that, we would not provide funds for the same thing.
Okay. Does the NIJ representative coordinate with our faculty mentors or directly with us on research projects?
Directly with the student. The faculty representative or mentor, advisor, the information we provide to that individual is how the student is doing in the program. And that's via the annual or biannual review we do of the student's performance.
Does the RA work create conflict with existing doctoral research, or can both be pursued without prejudice to each other?
It does not cause conflict. If there's any type of conflict, and part of the process, students will sign non-disclosure agreements. They will be assessed for conflict of interest. So there should not be any, because those are things that we look into once the student comes on board.
Okay. I have a question. Can I submit my dissertation that was recently completed and approved by my university and now being published by ProQuest?
So if you've completed your dissertation, you would not. If you completed your dissertation and your program, you would not be eligible for the RAP.
Okay. How much is the stipend provided by NIJ?
That depends on the university. So as part of this process, as we're establishing the agreement with the university works with the student to develop a budget. And they submit that budget to NIJ, we have discussion, what have you, and then that budget becomes approved by NIJ, and those are the funds the student will have. So the stipend is determined by the university, not by NIJ.
Okay, thank you. If a student's course of study in a doctoral program requires them to take more credit hours than they're covered by NIJ, is the student required to find outside funding to cover the rest of their tuition?
I don't know the answer to that question at this point, but we can work on getting the answer to that question. I haven't experienced that before, where students were taking more credits than we have specified. We'll get an answer to that question, and we will post it under the FAQs.
Okay, and then what is the research assistantship program during the summer look like?
During the summer, RAs generally have worked up to 40 hours a week. and they're continuing the work that they have been doing throughout the year. So it's not different work. It's just usually more hours that they can devote to the work that they're doing.
Okay. Is there an acceptance in forensic psychology?
It certainly can be, as long as the applicant demonstrates the relevance of their work to crime and justice issues.
Does a PhD in education studies count?
Yes, and as noted previously, it's eligible as long as the work is in a supported discipline in the social and behavioral sciences, operations technology, technology development and standards, or investigative and forensic sciences.
When are the interviews for selected applicants?
Those interviews could be a month after receipt of all the applications. As noted, we have the first step in the process is to go through, review all applications, rate, rank them, et cetera, and determine which students we want to interview. That could be about a month after receipt of the applications. It just depends on the timing on which they are received. Usually the deadline for submission of applications has been in January of the following year. So if we announce in the fall, and the deadline is usually in January, and we are making our decisions and starting the process of paperwork and all of that thing between March and April.
Okay. And I have a question. Is the number of hours worked per week determined by the school's requirements, or is there a set number of hours worked per week?
It's determined by the school's requirements. So research assistants at NIJ are comparable to those at the university.
Right. And I have a question. I think you had pretty much just answered this, but with the application, when has the application deadline typically been in previous years?
Yes. So again, the deadline usually is in January.
Okay.
So we announce in the fall, and the deadline is usually in January.
Okay, and I think that's all of the questions that we have right now.
Right. Well, as you see on the last slide, you can go to the RAP webpage at the URL indicated so that you can get more specific information about the requirements. Also, what students have done in the past, if you have questions, certainly you can email them to the NIJ RAP at usdoj.gov. You can ask your questions. Some applicants have reached out and asked if they could talk with a current RA, and many of the RAs are amenable to that. So I would recommend that as well. If you have questions, they're willing to tell you about the good, the great, and the challenging of being an RA. Certainly keep in mind that we are part of the U.S. Department of Justice, and so that carries everything that one would expect working for a large federal agency, which we are bureaucracy, but there's good aspects of bureaucracy, and there can be some challenging aspects of bureaucracy as well. But if you want to learn about what we do in the federal government, if you want to have an opportunity to contribute to research, development, and the like at a federal agency dedicated to crime and justice, then I would strongly encourage you to apply.
Okay, on behalf of the National Institute of Justice, thank you for joining today's webinar. This will end today's presentation.